Over the past few months, there have been a lot of videos on YouTube from non-Nikon creators talking about how great the Z8 is. And I started to wonder, I think these guys are making a case for the Z6 III. Before we begin, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support the channel, there are links for items to purchase in the description area of each video. If you recall back in 2022, into 2023, there were a lot of non-Nikon creators that were shooting with the Z9 and finding out what a great camera it was. At the time, a lot of us who already knew about the Z9 didn't think much of it. But I thought, this is kind of odd. How is it that all these guys are now jumping in the Nikon bandwagon, so to speak? And it seems as though Nikon was making some headroads into getting people who are typically not shooting Nikon to try the camera out in order to make a big hit on the Z8. Now granted, those of us who picked up the camera first were Nikon shooters all along. There were some people who left Nikon and came back who picked up the Z8. There were some people who were non-Nikon shooters, tried it out, and they're liking it. There were a few video events that took place that we didn't hear about, or let's call them content creator events, where we had young up-and-coming creators who were making videos about this camera. It was their first time even hearing about a Nikon. They didn't even realize Nikon existed. And like a lot of people, they see Nikon as a photo-only camera. Or I should say, a lot of people who used to see Nikon as a photo-only camera are now realizing that this camera is fantastic for video. So let's take a step back to the original mirrorless camera from Nikon, the Z6. These cameras showed that Nikon could do very well in video as well in photography. And I would say it's continuing the photography trend, because Nikon was always fantastic when it came to photography. It was just the video side that was not that great. I used the D500, and I wasn't too impressed with it. The lens would pulse back and forth, the microphone would pick up the noise, so it wasn't the greatest for video. Now, there were some other cameras, the D5, D6 series that were doing well, but you know, the mirrorless were like, nah. And I have to say, I was one of those people who was guilty of the fact that I gave up on Nikon mainly because of the video. For most of us who were just starting to do video with the Nikon, we didn't know what these things were about. And I can tell you from my experience in starting out with this, I picked up a Ninja recorder so I could figure out what the 10-bit looked like. And I'd say it was wonderful. I didn't do this until I got the Z6 II. I almost sent the camera in for the raw upgrade, but I didn't know what I was doing, so to me it wasn't a big thing. With the Ninja, I paid for the ProRes upgrade to give me some high quality 10-bit files. And if you've been watching my channel from the beginning, when I started talking about the Z6 II and some of the lenses that I bought and some of the early travel videos, that's the camera that was shooting a lot of those videos. And I'll say this, the images were fantastic. That camera helped me to learn how to do some color grading. Now granted, back then there weren't that many people talking about editing log files with Nikon, and today there are a lot of people who've been putting out videos about how to edit log files. I probably should have done one myself, but you know, most of the people who watch my channel are Nikon people, and they don't usually shoot that much. But I think now as things are kind of pick up, the Z8 is getting more and more people interested in what the Z6 III is going to build. Not just Nikon shooters, but the other content creators who say, $4,000, bit pricey for my budget to pick up this camera. And also, let's not forget, the ZF is also giving people a tease of what Nikon can do. These two together, but I would say mainly the Z8, is making the case for the Z6 III. All those wonderful features that we got for the ZF, more than likely are going to get ported to the Z6 III. When we talk about NRAW and recording in log and up to 6K, that's the thing that people are looking for today. And sometimes when you get 6K cameras, you're looking at a compressed 6K 60. If Nikon does like they do with the Z8 and give you 8K 60, full RAW, full screen, no compression, and they do the same thing with the Z6 III, I think it'll be a winner. In addition to owning Sony cameras, this has given me some experience as far as their growth. When I looked at the earlier R series camera, because I bought an A7R5, I'm not going to talk about the FX30, that's a whole different thing, but let me touch on that a little bit. That camera went from thin, get a little bit thicker, to the A7R5, which they had 8K video on it. That thing is thicker, heavier. Now, while mirrorless has always been about being lighter and smaller, the one thing that we have to say, just like our iPhones, when they first started about thinner and it's all been getting thinner and thinner, it got to a point where you have to realize the screen and the processing is going to require a bigger battery than you thought it's going to be. So each time they keep making it a little bit bigger, they make it a little bit smaller, but a little bit wider. It's the same thing with the cameras. In order to manage these higher codecs, you need space to manage the heat that they're going to produce. Nikon has done pretty well with the Z9 and the Z8 to do 2 hours and 5 minutes without a fan. And also, I have to say, it's the same on the ZF, but the ZF doesn't shoot 8K. The ZF's on a little bit of thicker side, and when I saw that camera, I said, wow, I think the Z6 III is going to get thicker. And some of the specs we've been seeing as far as the dimensions, you know, I personally would like it to be between the Z6 II and the Z8. A little bit taller, slightly wider, and a bit thicker. Yes, that's going to make the camera heavier, but that is what we need. The image that came out when I looked at the information of that era for when it said Z6, the speaker, and that little icon for the center ports for the sensor, well, that area is a little bit bigger. And that's telling me something. The camera is getting thicker. It has to. It's an engineering thing. You can't stuff a camera, well, you can't stuff a sensor in a camera that's gonna give you a higher bitrate recording. And I'm sure Nikon is planning to go internal RAW, just like they said at the Z9, which means they're gonna need some space for cooling. Personally, I'd like to see a fan on it. And if they find some way to integrate it, like that FX30 where it's kind of on the back with that slight amount of thickness on it, I think it's great. That little hole that we saw on the side, I think it's a mounting point. And if they make it as a mounting point, they're taking things to the next level. And bear with me for a moment. Let me explain this. Panasonic, they went with fan built into the EVF area. Fuji, they had a screw-on fan that you can have in the back of it. What did Sony do? They give you a cinema camera. Canon, the same way. Their other cameras can record video and do it fairly well, but for those long form recordings, you're gonna go like a camcorder, you need active cooling. We've been waiting for the Z6 III for a couple years now. It's long overdue. And I think Nikon is gonna knock it out of the park with this camera. The reason why you have these other content creators doing videos about the Z8, at least in my opinion, at this time, is because some of them probably have an advanced preview camera that they're working on, and now they're sharing their information about their Z8, what they like about it, because some of these same folks are probably going to be making a jump towards the Z6 III. And if they do it, their followers are going to do it. So guys, let me know what you think. Do you share my opinion in thinking that these guys are now making Nikon videos, non-Nikon shooters? Maybe some of them actually are testing this camera and now are talking about the Z8 as well. Or Nikon is just giving them the Z8 to play around with because they want to get them interested and get their people, their followers, interested in this camera. Let me know your comments below. I'll see you guys in the next video.